Welcome to the Sobirovs Law Firm YouTube channel. I'm your host, Rakhmad Sobirov, and today I have my colleague, Mariam Jammal, and we will be delving into immigration topic, business immigration, overall immigration, and in one word, Canada's immigration. Welcome, Mariam. Glad to see you.
Thanks, Rakhmad. Happy to be here.
It's that time of the year where we try to make some conclusion of 2025. I know November and December are still a part of this year, but many things have happened lately. And I want to take this time with you to discuss some of the pressing issues you hear from the clients that you consult or overall immigration bar. Looking forward for a great conversation.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So without further ado, I will just bring the questions that we gathered from the audience and the concerns. Let's talk about immigration level plans. Can you give us a quick overview what we were doing last year and before the start of 2025? And we will start from end of 2024, going into 25, what had happened, a brief overview, and we'll talk about the plans later on.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to characterize and use one word to characterize the year, the last 12 months, it's definitely been one of a lot of change, a lot of unanticipated change and survival, so to speak, especially if you're talking about the immigrant community, immigration community as a whole. We ended off the year with a couple of unprecedented, unexpected announcements. The first being that, yes, the level plan was released and it was clear that there was going to be a reduction in overall targets, and it was quite a significant reduction in overall targets. The one that immediately comes to mind as it impacts a lot of our clients or, the business immigration community is the reduction in spots for the PNP programs, right? Almost having them for most of these provinces. That was a huge shift. We ended off the year again with unprecedented, unexpected news, which was that the job offer provision within Express Entry was going to be completely suspended, which definitely affected the business immigration community, but more broadly it impacted temporary residents and PR hopefuls as a whole, right? Fundamentally shifted how strategy needed to be set when it came to transitioning to PR as someone who is either already in Canada or has already started their process. Particularly tough blow for the business immigration demographic because options were already relatively limited. We just come off of, I believe, 2023, the previous year, the self-employed program being suspended until end of 2026. We had seen some major shifts in the startup visa program, quotas reduced for there quite significantly, a reduction of down to 10 letters per designated organization. So that was a big blow. The PNP programs, the entrepreneur streams are just now, they were under revision. They're just now, a couple of them are kind of in a good position to move forward, but it wasn't the most accessible option, if you will. And then we ended off the year with the most streamlined pathway to PR being completely eliminated. So it's definitely been a year where we've seen these reduction in targets and reduction in numbers come into effect and actually play out. And it's been continuous. I'm looking forward to see what this next announcement brings.
This is the year of change in politics, in immigration. We have a new prime minister. This is the second minister of immigration since prime minister, right? We had tons of changes. And to be honest, as a lawyer, I had a hard time keeping up with the changes. What was your experience?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that I don't know a single lawyer who hasn't, it's a daily practice, maybe even multiple times a day, just going back and double checking the programs they work with, double checking any announcements, scrolling through their listserv to see if there's anything new come up. Because what we've seen as well is, aside from these major changes, like the shift in the Express Entry program, a lot of the changes to programs and policies has happened very quietly overnight. So we'd be working with one program. A prime example, honestly, is C11 and the ICT program. We'd be working with the program, and then when we go to check, we'd find like, oh, actually, it's been recently updated, but there hasn't been any formal announcement that there's been shifts or modifications to the programs. Luckily, for the most part, it hasn't been so jarring. But certainly, if you're not updating and checking on a daily basis, things like this can slip your attention, and you'd find out sometimes in the most random or unexpected ways.
So the topic of this year for lawyers, my colleagues, and our clients is be vigilant, be alert.
Be vigilant, give yourself enough time during this turbulent economic climate, and be flexible and adaptable, because we never know when change is going to come and exactly in what form. So the more
Mhm.
prepped you are to adapt, the less difficult it'll be to keep up with how immigration is evolving.
Good point. You mentioned about the startup visa program, and I have a very good question about that from our audience. So the startup visa program has been increased in scrutiny, right? And
Yeah.
longer processing time. We heard 10 years recently as a processing time. What are the most common pitfalls businesses are facing? And what would be your advice for entrepreneurs considering this specific pathway in 2026?
Yeah, I think honestly, there's so many different things I hear from so many different people. The legal community's been very vocal about it. Applicants themselves have been very vocal. IRCC and the federal court have been very vocal. But it seems if I were to take all of this and find a root cause or commonality, it's been a lot of misinformation. A lot of people come with this expectation or this understanding that, okay, I've submitted my application. Now I wait until I have PR before I actually launch my business, which is the
Mm,
exact opposite of what you're supposed to do, right?
mm,
There's a
yeah.
lot of miscommunication and misconception about what are my obligations while I wait for my application to be processed, right? Do
Mm,
I work on the business? Do I not? What is the threshold for when it's enough work and I can wait? What if I suddenly need to come to Canada or I need to leave? There's just a lot of misinformation about what the obligations are around this program,
mm,
particularly in that now ever prolonged, continuously growing processing time, right? So,
yeah.
absolutely, you need to keep working on your business. The SUV program is one that is your business has to be innovative to even get the letter of support to be able to submit the application.
Mhm.
Innovation is one of those things that can rapidly shift, and the bar and the threshold for innovation shifts so quickly, especially now as we're dealing with the introduction and evolution of AI and AI
Mhm.
agents and
Mhm.
LLMs and all these different things. You have to stay on top. You have to be ready to pivot and shift and keep up with the changing times, even if the processing of your immigration application is slow. If we want to talk about the processing time, there's a lot of speculation about why it's 10
Yeah.
years. I don't think it's unique to the startup visa program by any stretch of the imagination. If you look at processing times for a lot of applications, it's quite long. The
Yeah.
backlog is quite significant. There's a lot of volume in queue. When you couple that with the reduction in targets, you're going to end up in a difficult position. And
Mhm.
Mark Carney yesterday in his latest national address,
Uh-huh.
Prime Minister Mark Carney did say, like, this is the time for sacrifice. And to some extent, sacrifice is going to
Wow.
include being more efficient and being,
Yeah.
even from a government perspective, doing more with less, right? So,
Mhm.
what we've seen this translate to is yes, there's been a lot of layoffs and reduction in team size when it comes to government departments, and IRCC is no different. It's like the perfect storm. A lot of people in queue, limited programs, so a lot more people interested and applying under these programs,
Mhm.
less capacity to process, and an already high volume of applications in the queue, it's going to take longer.
To add
Yeah.
to the government's deliberate actions to reduce immigration,
Right.
overall, the
Exactly.
plans.
Deliberate actions
Yeah.
overall. A lot of programs are experiencing longer processing times. There's no actual predictability into how long it may or may not take. These are average aggregates. There's a lot to consider.
Mhm.
There's a lot of applications in the pool from before the changes last year. We now have the introduction of something called the priority versus non priority. There's a lot of
Mhm.
these things going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
So you just got to be ready.
In light of this, what we've already discussed so far, the immigration plans are decreasing. We will hear on November 4th what it will be for the next couple of years. And plus, the startup visa also been scrutinized, long waiting time, long processing times, and so on. In light of all these, what would be your advice in terms of which pathways are still there?
The SUV program is a particularly tricky one because you're not just dealing with your own application. You're also taking into
Yeah.
consideration your partner's application, your other founders' applications, because it's all interconnected, right? That doesn't mean that you can't pursue PR through different avenues. I've seen some people do it through their spouses. If their spouses get work and qualify under a different program or under a different pathway. You can get PR through that pathway if you have the open work permit and you pursue employment simultaneously. It's a delicate balance to keep up, to be fair. But if other avenues for PR do open up, you can pursue them. At least publicly facing information right now from IRCC is that if someone does manage to secure PR independently or through another means, the rest of the SUV application does continue to process. And once decisions are made, it's simply a matter of canceling or withdrawing this pending application. It shouldn't impact the rest of your team in this way, the way it would if you just decided to withdraw independently or cancel. You
Right.
can pursue other pathways. You can pursue economic pathways. A strategic decision a lot of people are making are to have, to tag team between them and their spouses. I'll focus on the business, you focus on finding work. I'll focus on keeping this pathway going and actually working on my business, which is my goal. But you're free to find work. And if that work leads to PR for our family through another avenue, that's perfectly fine. The alternative is simply you got to keep going. You got to keep working on your business. Within the program itself, there is the substitute evaluation clause where
Yes, that's
you
what
can
I was trying to get to. If you cannot go through other pathway and you're stuck with startup visa and you've invested so much money, plus you have your partners who rely on you, you don't want to exit in the most difficult time and let that house of cards dismantle. What would be that substitute evaluation? And I'm asking it as a layman. What is that substitute evaluation overall? How it's
Yeah, substitute evaluation. It's something under the program that allows you can make the request of the officer to instead of assessing your application on the basis of the SUV program's requirements and criteria, you ask them to assess you on your ability to be economically established and financially self-sufficient in Canada. So that's a combination of your savings, different streams of income. It can include things like employability. So if you're in Canada, you have the open work permit, it's worthwhile at the very least applying to jobs, seeing what the job market looks like for you. If you do find work that's sustainable while you do your business, you can certainly do that. But that's the basis. If there's any possibility that IRCC may refuse you on the basis of the program, you can make this request in advance and sort of have a secondary option or a safety net of sorts so that there's an alternative standard for which they can evaluate you and grant you PR.
And it's like saying, okay, you are evaluating me under this first set of criteria, but I also want you to evaluate me on this set of criteria and make an exception to grant me a PR.
The argument there is really that I, as an individual, can be self sufficient in Canada. I can contribute to the economy. My skill set, my experience, my employability can be an asset to the Canadian economy and the Canadian public with or without my business. So, on that basis, there's a foundation for which it would be a positive, it would be beneficial to grant me PR. So I can do this in Canada. I can continue
Is
contributing in
there
Canada.
any statistics as to the approval rates of that substitute evaluation, or is it like very case by
Yeah,
case?
it's not like they give you a set of documents or exact requirements. It's kind of that fluid. If you're economically established, if you can be economically established, financially self sufficient. I also don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that we have any statistics yet, partially because I don't think it's a provision that's used as often as it can be. And so, even if we have statistics, I would wager they're probably not as informative because it's a more rarely used provision because everyone banks on the initial application.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about intracompany transfer, one of the
Yeah.
most popular programs used by those foreign businesses who want to expand into Canadian market. What did you see happening on the ICT front this year?
Listen, ICT used to be, and to a certain extent still is, one of my favorite programs. It's a great option for people who want to expand their business, but there has been probably the most significant change to the program since for the last year and a bit has been this emphasis on multinational corporations. So in order to expand your business to Canada, you need to demonstrate that your business is in and of itself multinational. So it has operations, active operations in at least two countries. So we're talking business location, employees, independently generating revenue, like fully established operations. So if you have already a business in Canada that is running and operational and meets that criteria, then you're good to go to continue transferring people over. In cases where you are, let's say, the business owner or a member of the C-suite or executive of some kind, and you want to come and actually build your second location in Canada, that's going to be trickier. You're going to have to filter into other programs, possibly the C11, maybe C10, depending on the needs of the business. The other emphasis that has been placed with the program is on the specialized knowledge category. You need to have both specialized or advanced proprietary knowledge and advanced level of expertise simultaneously to qualify as specialized knowledge. So the company
Nice.
itself needs to have proprietary knowledge or some parts of its enterprise, whether it's products or systems or something that are so specific and not publicly known or publicly accessible that only someone who has been working with the company for a significant amount of time and specifically with those products or systems or what have you can realistically do the job. And that individual also needs to have advanced expertise. So whether that's advanced degrees, advanced certifications, a veteran of the industry, recognized within the industry, something to that.
And now ICT, these changes don't really apply to the free trade agreement countries, right? Because Canada has now with Indonesia being added 16 free trade agreements covering 52 countries. Can those free trade agreement countries, people from those businesses from those countries, have to be still multinational, or there's an exception for that?
It's one of those things, I would say err on the side of caution just because the treaty programs that do exist, they will still ultimately reference the operational guidelines of the baseline intercompany transfer program. The other thing is that this multinational company or corporation definition has been updated in IRCC's definitions as a whole, not just specific to the general ICT program.
Okay.
You would be tossing the dice and seeing. It really will depend, I guess, on the officer on the back end. It's not one I wouldn't rely on that. That's not where I would, given everything we've seen in immigration, I wouldn't rely on that. A better strategy, one that I've recommended, is come with something on the C11, build your business, get it going. If you need to make any structural changes down the line, that's fine. But once the business is operational and you can confidently say you meet that multinational component, then there's always the opportunity to shift over down the line if it makes sense.
Yes. And now you mentioned C11, which is my keyword here. C11, we will take a quick break now, but we will come back and we will discuss C11, what changes you've seen and what's the foresight you're looking at in 2025, 2026. Let's take a quick break and come back soon, okay?
Are you constantly on the move, managing your business, and looking for a convenient way to stay informed about expanding your business to Canada? Look no further. Introducing Speaking of Canada, the podcast that keeps you in the loop on all things related to Canadian business immigration, delivering the latest news and valuable tips and captivating interviews, no matter how busy your schedule gets. Speaking of Canada has got you covered.
All right, and we are back. Now, before the break, I mentioned that we will be talking about C11. What has changed? What things were moving in that front? And what do you see coming?
Absolutely. So we have had some program updates of the C11 this past year, just a couple months ago, actually. The biggest change or introduction, the newest thing about the C11 program is now applicants are required to demonstrate that they not only have sufficient funds to operate their business, but they have sufficient funds to support their family for that initial 18-month duration that they get their work permit. And that calculation based on Canada's low income cutoff. So that's one. The initial work permit is now reduced to 18 months, a maximum of 18 months in comparison to 2 years. There's greater emphasis on this program being temporary. You have to prove that temporary intent. You have to show that you have ties to your home country. You have to make sure that you're able to demonstrate that you're able and willing to leave at the end of your duration if you're not able to extend your status or transition to something else. It's a lot more information about what the officers are looking for, what IRCC is looking for when it comes to business plan, which is not a bad thing, actually. Having more information about what the standard you need to meet is a good thing.
The popularity of this C11 was about transitioning into PR. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that the job offer additional points are now no longer present. And now it has become truly a temporary resident program rather than a passage to PR.
You know, To a certain extent, that's always been the case, so to speak. It's not like the C11 has a sister program that's specifically for PR. It was the case where you would come with C11, and then once you're scaled up your business, once it's operational, you can sort of, for lack of a better word, self-sponsor yourself and LMIA or non-LMIA job
Yeah.
offer point through the express entry system. It worked. It wasn't an exact fit because it was designed really more towards the traditionally employed crowd, but it worked well. There still is opportunity to transition to PR. It just requires a little bit more strategic foresight. The PNPs are still in place. When you're
Yes,
making a
PNPs.
decision, it's a good idea to consider what the PNP factors are when making a decision about how you want to structure your business, where you want to go, just to keep that option open for you down the line. So there's plenty of provinces that are open to transitioning existing businesses to PR through the program. So British Columbia is one, Alberta is one, New Brunswick is one as well. You just want to be up to date about what's required to do that. So what are the minimum eligibility thresholds for each province? What are the minimum investment thresholds? For example, British Columbia and I believe Alberta, they will accept your nomination request if you already have a business.
So let me
Yes.
connect then, Mariam. So you are running your business on your C11 work permit. And now you say, hey, province, I've been running this business for some time. Will you please allow me to proceed with
Yeah.
entrepreneurs?
Exactly. Exactly. And so you just want to be aware of what the provinces require in advance. So New Brunswick, for example, if you've invested your money in your business according to their requirements, according to their rules, they're happy to consider any previous investment you made towards your nomination pathway. In comparison, British Columbia and I believe Alberta will still require you to make a fresh investment of at least that minimum investment requirement. So just something to keep in mind. And I know some people ask, well, why go C11 at all instead of PNP? And there's a multitude of reasons. And that's why I still like the C11 program for people. It gives you an opportunity to come and test out your business beyond just doing an exploratory trip. Actually get your hands dirty and get your business going, see where the pitfalls are, see where you need to make adjustments, see if you and your family like living in Canada, like the location you're in, explore opportunities a little bit more comfortably before starting out on that, for lack of a better word, firm commitment with the PNP program. Benefit there. Some people are just at the threshold of being eligible, but are missing maybe one component or need a little bit more time. They don't have to delay their business interests just for the sake of immigration now. So it's still a useful program. It's still a program that carries a lot of utility for applicants. And again, it sets you up. If not PNP, immigration is in constant change. You never know what programs come out. It may put you in a better position to take advantage when those programs become available.
I want to touch now that aspect of those lack of points for job offer for those who are experienced and over 40 years old, because now they are in disadvantage. Do you expect any change coming for those very experienced people who now cannot pass to permanent residence because they cannot additional points?
Earlier on in August, the government launched a public survey about a program or a stream under express entry that they're thinking of, one for senior managers. I'm hopeful that this will capture the business owners, the small business owners, big business owners, whatever the case may be, in it as well, because it would be a really great way for people to transition to PR. You know, I've met people who have great businesses, but they're not innovative. So there's not really an opportunity under the SUV program. I've met business owners who have great businesses, but are just under the threshold or just don't meet the exact requirements of the PNP programs. These are all still people who have businesses in Canada who are contributing in different ways, creating jobs, creating opportunities, providing significant benefits in different ways, but they're kind of stuck.
But they need to be recognized. That needs to be recognized.
Exactly. And this would be a great way to help filter what really is critical talent in its own right in Canada. You can't function, you can't build a business, you can't hire people and train people if the key decision makers, if the key knowledge holders can't stay or have to leave because it's so uncertain and unstable for them, their lives in Canada.